The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Catherine, Princess of Wales, made her way through the private study. She had come to retrieve some historical documents for a charity event she was organizing. The room smelled of old leather and polished wood, filled with centuries of royal history. Kate moved gracefully between the shelves, her fingers trailing along the spines of ancient books. She was looking for records about previous royal patronages when she noticed a leather-bound folder that seemed out of place. It was wedged behind other documents, almost hidden from view. Curiosity sparked within her as she carefully pulled out the folder. The leather was worn but well preserved, suggesting it had been handled many times before being tucked away. As she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was an official-looking document with an ornate seal she recognized immediately as authentic royal certification. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the heading, Certificate of Marriage. The date was from 1979, years before Charles had married Diana. Kate's eyes widened as she scanned the names on the document. Charles Philip Arthur George was clearly written as the groom. But the bride's name made her heart skip a beat. The name belonged to someone she had never heard mentioned in all her years within the royal family. Sarah Pemberton. Who was this woman? Kate felt the weight of discovery pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just any document. This was potentially explosive information that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. Kate sank into a nearby chair, the certificate still in her hands. Her mind raced with questions. If Charles had been married before Diana, why had it been kept secret? Was this marriage annulled? Divorced? The document showed the marriage date, but nothing about its dissolution. She thought about William, her husband, and how this revelation might affect him. Charles was not just her father-in-law, but the King of England. If this marriage was legitimate and had never been properly dissolved, it could call into question the validity of his marriage to Diana, and subsequently, the legitimacy of William and Harry's positions in the line of succession. Kate's rational mind told her she needed to verify this document's authenticity before jumping to conclusions. But her intuition, honed by years of navigating royal protocols and secrets, told her this was real. The paper quality, the official seals, the signatures, everything pointed to its authenticity. She carefully photographed the document with her phone, making sure to capture every detail. Then she returned the folder to its hiding place. Though her hands shook as she did so, Kate knew she couldn't unsee what she had discovered, but she also understood the delicate nature of her position. The princess left the study, her mind in turmoil. She needed time to think, to process what she had found. The charity event documents she had originally come for were forgotten. This discovery was far more significant than any charitable endeavor. As she walked through the palace corridors, every portrait of past monarchs seemed to stare at her with knowing eyes. The weight of royal secrets pressed upon her. Kate had always prided herself on her discretion and loyalty to the crown, but this discovery tested those qualities like never before. She thought about the woman named in the certificate, Sarah Pemberton. The name meant nothing to her, which seemed impossible, given how thoroughly the royal family's history was documented. If Charles had been married before, surely there would be some record, some mention somewhere. Kate decided she needed to research carefully. She couldn't simply ask Charles about it. That would be far too direct and potentially catastrophic. She couldn't tell William immediately either, not until she understood more about what this meant. The implications were staggering. That evening, Kate found herself distracted at dinner. William noticed her preoccupation and asked if she was feeling well. She assured him she was fine, just tired from the day's activities. But inside, her mind churned with the secret she now carried. She excused herself early and retreated to her private study. Using secure channels, she began searching for any information about Sarah Pemberton from the late 1970s. What she found made her even more puzzled. There were a few society photographs from that era showing a young woman who appeared at various events, but nothing substantial. The woman in the photos was beautiful, with dark hair and striking features. She appeared in pictures at charity galas and society events, always impeccably dressed. But after 1979, She seemed to vanish from public record entirely. It was as if Sarah Pemberton had been erased from history. Kate's investigative instincts kicked in. She had always been good at research, a skill from her university days that served her well in her royal duties. She made discreet inquiries through trusted contacts, careful not to reveal what she was looking for specifically. Days passed, and Kate found herself torn between her duty to the crown and her need for truth. She observed Charles at family gatherings with new eyes, wondering what secrets he carried. Did the Queen know about this before she passed? Did anyone else in the family know? One evening, while attending a state dinner, Kate noticed an elderly woman among the guests who kept staring at Charles with an odd expression. The woman was introduced as Lady Margaret Thornton, a longtime friend of the royal family. Something about her manner made Kate curious. During a break in the festivities, Kate approached Lady Margaret. They exchanged pleasantries before Kate carefully steered the conversation toward the past. She mentioned her interest in royal history from the late 1970s for her charity work. Lady Margaret's expression changed subtly, her eyes sharpened, and she looked at Kate with what seemed like recognition. The late 70s were complicated times for the royal family, she said carefully. Not everything that happened made it into the official histories. Kate's pulse quickened, but she maintained her composure. She sensed that Lady Margaret knew something, but was bound by discretion. The elderly woman excused herself before Kate could probe further, leaving the princess with even more questions. That night, Kate made a decision. She would dig deeper, but carefully. The marriage certificate was just the beginning. She needed to understand the full story before deciding what to do with this explosive information. The future of the monarchy might hang in the balance. As she lay in bed next to William, Kate stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. She had stumbled upon a secret that could change everything. The palace that had seemed so solid and unchanging now felt fragile, built on foundations that might not be as firm as everyone believed. The discovery of the marriage certificate was just the first thread. Kate sensed that pulling it would unravel much more than anyone could imagine. She closed her eyes, knowing that her life had irrevocably changed the moment she found that hidden document. The question now was, what would she do with the truth? Kate's investigation intensified over the following weeks. She had become consumed by the mystery of Sarah Pemberton, spending her free hours piecing together fragments of information like a detective working on a cold case. Every lead seemed to take her deeper into a web of secrets that the royal family had carefully concealed for decades. Through discreet inquiries at various archives and libraries, Kate discovered that Sarah Pemberton had been the daughter of a prominent diplomat. She had moved in the highest social circles of London during the 1970s. Young, beautiful, and intelligent, Sarah had caught the attention of many eligible bachelors, including, apparently, the young Prince Charles. The princess found old newspaper clippings from society columns that mentioned Sarah attending the same events as Charles. In several photographs, they appeared together, though always in group settings. The body language in these images spoke volumes. There was an unmistakable intimacy in the way they looked at each other. Kate's breakthrough came when she located Sarah's former roommate from that era, now living quietly in the Cotswolds. Using the pretense of research for a historical project, Kate arranged a private meeting with the woman, Eleanor Hartwell. Eleanor was now in her 70s, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through Kate's carefully constructed cover story. They met in Eleanor's cottage garden, surrounded by blooming roses and the gentle hum of bees. "You want to know about Sarah," Eleanor said directly, cutting through the pleasantries. "I wondered when someone would finally come asking. I've kept her secrets for over 40 years. Kate's heart raced, but she maintained her composure. Eleanor poured tea with steady hands and began to tell a story that had been buried for decades. Sarah Pemberton had indeed married Charles in a secret ceremony in Scotland. It had been a moment of youthful passion and rebellion. Charles, under immense pressure to find a suitable bride, had fallen deeply in love with Sarah, but she was deemed unsuitable by the palace establishment. Her father's diplomatic work had created some controversial connections, and there were whispers about her own modern views that didn't align with royal expectations. They were genuinely in love, Eleanor said, her eyes distant with memory. Sarah used to come back to our flat, glowing with happiness. Charles would send her letters every day when they were apart. He promised her they would find a way to make it work, but the palace machinery had moved swiftly to contain what they saw as a disaster. The marriage was kept secret while pressure was applied from all sides. The Queen Mother, in particular, was vehemently opposed. Sarah was offered a substantial sum to agree to an annulment and to disappear from public life. Sarah refused at first. Eleanor continued. She loved Charles and believed he would stand by her. But the pressure was relentless. They threatened her father's career, suggested scandals that could be manufactured. It was made clear that if she didn't cooperate, not just she but her entire family would be destroyed. Kate felt sick as she listened. The ruthlessness of the palace machine was something she had sensed but never fully understood until now. Eleanor explained that eventually, Sarah had agreed to the annulment, but only after discovering she was pregnant. Pregnant? Kate couldn't hide her shock. Eleanor nodded gravely. She was 3 months along when she signed the papers. The palace promised to take care of everything. The child would be provided for, educated at the best schools, given every advantage except one: the truth about their parentage. Kate's mind reeled. If Charles had a child from this marriage, that meant William had a half-sibling he knew nothing about. The implications were staggering. Eleanor revealed that Sarah had given birth to a son in Switzerland, away from prying eyes. The child was raised, believing his father had died before his birth. Sarah had honored her agreement, never revealing the truth, though it had broken her heart. What happened to Sarah? Kate asked, though she feared the answer. She never married again, Eleanor said sadly. She devoted herself to charity work, traveled extensively, but always alone. She died 10 years ago, taking the secret with her. Except for me, and now you. Eleanor stood and went inside her cottage, returning with an old shoebox. Inside were photographs and letters. She handed them to Kate with trembling hands. Sarah asked me to burn these before she died, but I couldn't. Perhaps I always knew someone would come looking for the truth one day. Kate carefully examined the contents. There were pictures of Charles and Sarah together, looking young and radiantly happy. The letters were in Charles's distinctive handwriting, filled with declarations of love and promises of a future together. One letter, dated after the annulment, was particularly heartbreaking. My darling Sarah, they have taken everything from us, but they cannot take what we shared. I will think of you every day for the rest of my life. Please forgive me for not being strong enough to fight for us. All my love, C. Among the papers was another document that made Kate's hands shake: a birth certificate for a boy named Alexander James, born in Geneva. The father's name was listed as James Pemberton, clearly a fabrication, but the date matched perfectly with the timeline Eleanor had described. Where is Alexander now? Kate asked. Eleanor smiled sadly. He goes by Alex. He's a successful architect in London. He has no idea about his true parentage. Sarah made sure he had the best education. Every opportunity. There was a trust fund that paid for everything, though Alex was told it was from his late father's estate. Kate realized she had possibly seen Alex before. London's architectural circles occasionally intersected with royal charities. The thought that she might have unknowingly met William's half-brother made her head spin. Eleanor showed Kate a recent photograph of Alex. The resemblance to Charles was subtle but unmistakable. The same eyes, the same jawline. He looked to be in his early 40s, successful and distinguished, living a life completely separate from the royal world he should have been part of. Sarah made me promise never to tell Alex the truth, Eleanor said. She thought it would only bring him pain, but I've always wondered if that was the right decision. Doesn't everyone deserve to know where they come from? Kate spent the rest of the afternoon with Eleanor, learning more about Sarah's life and the devastating impact the forced annulment had on her. Sarah had apparently watched from afar as Charles married Diana, had children, and lived the life that might have been hers. As Kate prepared to leave, Eleanor pressed a small locket into her hand. This was Sarah's. She wore it always. Inside is a picture from their wedding day. I think she would want someone to know the truth, even if it's too late to change anything. Kate drove back to London in a daze. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Charles had been married before, had a son, and the entire affair had been covered up with brutal efficiency. The palace she served, the institution she had devoted her life to, had destroyed lives to maintain its image. That evening, she locked the evidence in her private safe. Looking at William over dinner, she wondered how he would react to learning he had an older half-brother. Would Charles acknowledge Alex if confronted with the truth? What would this mean for the line of succession? Kate realized she was sitting on a powder keg. The information she possessed could destroy the monarchy's credibility. The public would be outraged at the deception, the cruelty shown to Sarah, and the existence of an unacknowledged royal heir. She began to notice things differently in the palace. Conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. Meaningful looks between older courtiers. The way certain topics were carefully avoided. How many people knew parts of this secret? How many had helped maintain the lie? A week later, Kate made another discovery that chilled her to the bone. While researching palace records under the guise of her charity work, she found evidence of other cover-ups, other lives destroyed to protect the royal image. Sarah's story was not unique. It was part of a pattern. The weight of these secrets began to affect Kate. She found herself looking at Charles differently, wondering how he lived with what he had done. Did he think of Sarah? Did he know about Alex? The man she had known as a father figure now seemed like a stranger carrying terrible burdens. One afternoon, while at a garden party, Kate observed Charles interacting with guests. An architectural firm was being honored for their work on a royal property. Among the group was Alex Pemberton. Kate watched, her heart in her throat, as father and son stood mere feet apart, making polite conversation. Neither knowing the truth, the resemblance was even more striking in person. How could no one else see it? But then Kate realized that people saw what they expected to see. No one would look for a royal connection in a successful architect with a different name. After the event, Kate followed her instincts and approached Alex. They discussed his work, and Kate found him intelligent, charming, and surprisingly humble. He mentioned his mother briefly, speaking of her with deep affection and noting that she had passed away 10 years ago. She never remarried after my father died, Alex said. I always thought it was sad. She deserved to find love again. Kate's heart ached at the irony. Sarah had found love. A love so profound it had shaped the rest of her life, even in its absence. That night, Kate made a decision. The truth needed to come out, but not in a way that would destroy innocent lives. Alex deserved to know his heritage. Charles needed to acknowledge his son, and the palace needed to face the consequences of its actions. But how to reveal such explosive information without causing a constitutional crisis? Kate knew she needed allies. People within the palace who might share her views on truth and justice. She began to carefully sound out potential supporters, those who might help her navigate this minefield. The marriage certificate was no longer just a piece of paper. It was the key to unlocking decades of lies and bringing long overdue justice to those who had been wronged. Kate understood that once she acted, there would be no going back. The palace would never be the same. Kate spent sleepless nights wrestling with her conscience. The evidence she had gathered painted a picture of institutional cruelty that went against everything she believed the modern monarchy should represent. She knew that revealing the truth would cause an earthquake, but keeping silent made her complicit in the deception. Her first confidant was her private secretary, Margaret Davies, a woman of impeccable discretion who had served the royal family for 20 years. Kate invited Margaret to her private study and, after ensuring they wouldn't be disturbed, laid out everything she had discovered. Margaret's face paled as she examined the documents. Your Royal Highness, this is extraordinary. I had heard whispers over the years, but nothing concrete. The implications are staggering. Together, they developed a careful strategy. Kate knew that simply revealing everything to the media would cause chaos and hurt innocent people, particularly Alex, who had built a life without knowledge of his true parentage. Instead, she decided to first approach someone she believed might be an ally within the family. Princess Anne had always been known for her no-nonsense approach and her disdain for palace politics. Kate arranged a private meeting with her aunt-in-law under the pretense of discussing charity collaborations. They met at Anne's country estate, away from the prying eyes and ears of the palace. After pleasantries, Kate carefully broached the subject, watching Anne's expression closely. "I always wondered when this would surface," Anne said quietly after examining the marriage certificate. "I was young when it happened. But I remember the tension in the palace. Mother was furious with Charles. And the Queen Mother was like a force of nature, determined to make it all go away." Anne revealed more pieces of the puzzle. The annulment had been rushed through with the help of sympathetic church officials. Sarah had been portrayed as unsuitable, with rumors spread about her mental instability. All fabrications designed to justify the palace's actions. Charles fought it first, Anne continued. But the pressure was relentless. They convinced him it was for the good of the monarchy, that his duty came before personal happiness. He was never the same afterward. I think Diana paid the price for his broken heart. He could never fully commit because part of him was always with Sarah. Kate shared what she had learned about Alex, and Anne's expression softened. "A nephew I've never met. How terribly sad. Charles must know. There's no way the palace would have lost track of the child." This was confirmed when Kate, with Anne's help, gained access to classified royal archives. Hidden in files marked private and confidential were regular reports on Alex Pemberton, school records, university achievements, career milestones. The palace had indeed been watching him all along. Among these files was something that made Kate's blood run cold. Contingency plans for if Alex ever discovered the truth or if the media uncovered the story. The plans included strategies for discrediting him, legal maneuvers to prevent any claim to titles or succession, and even suggestions for encouraging him to emigrate. "This has to stop," Kate said firmly. "We cannot continue to be an institution that destroys lives to protect itself. What moral authority do we have if this is how we operate?" Well Sonning? Well Sonning. Well Sonning. Well Sonning. Well Sonning, Anne agreed, and together they decided to approach Charles directly. It was a risk, but Kate believed that after all these years, he might be ready to face the truth. The meeting was arranged for a private evening at Highgrove, Charles's beloved country retreat. Kate and Anne found him in his study, surrounded by his books and paintings. When they presented him with the evidence, his face went through a series of transformations. Shock, recognition, and finally, a deep, profound sadness. "You found it," he said quietly, sinking into his chair. "I always knew this day would come. I've carried this guilt for over 40 years. Charles revealed the full story from his perspective. He had genuinely loved Sarah, had married her in defiance of his family's wishes, but the pressure had been unbearable. His mother had been caught between her love for her son and her duty to the crown. The Queen Mother had threatened to have Sarah's father removed from his diplomatic post and had hinted at darker consequences if Charles didn't comply. "They told me I was being selfish, that the monarchy was bigger than my personal desires," Charles said, tears in his eyes. When Sarah told me about the pregnancy, I wanted to run away with her, give up everything. But they convinced me that our child would have a better life away from the spotlight, that I would only bring scrutiny and pain." He admitted that he had ensured Alex was provided for, had watched his progress from afar. "I've seen him at public events. He looks so much like my father. Every time I see him, it's like a knife in my heart." Kate pushed forward. "He deserves to know the truth. And the public deserves to know what was done in their name. We have a chance to make this right." Charles was torn. The king in him understood the potential damage to the monarchy, but the father in him, suppressed for so long, yearned to acknowledge his firstborn son. Over the following weeks, a careful plan was developed. William was brought into the circle of trust, his initial anger at the deception giving way to determination to right this historic wrong. He was particularly moved by the thought of having an older brother he had never known. The most delicate part was approaching Alex himself. Kate volunteered for this task, feeling a responsibility as the one who had uncovered the truth. She arranged to meet him at his architectural firm under the guise of discussing a potential royal commission. In his office, surrounded by models and blueprints of his creations, Kate carefully began to unveil the truth. She showed him the marriage certificate, the photos, the letters. Alex's hands shook as he read his father's words of love to his mother. "This can't be real," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "My mother never said." "I don't understand." Kate gently explained everything, including showing him the locket Eleanor had given her. When Alex opened it and saw the wedding photo of his parents, young and in love, he broke down. The meetings that followed were emotional and complex. Charles and Alex met privately first, father and son finally acknowledging each other after decades of separation. There were tears, anger, and eventually, the beginning of understanding. William embraced his half-brother with characteristic warmth, immediately insisting that Alex become part of their lives. The children would know their uncle, and the family would be whole, even if belatedly. The public revelation was handled with unprecedented transparency. Rather than allowing the media to uncover the story in a sensationalized way, the palace released a comprehensive statement, acknowledging the historic wrong. Charles gave a televised address, taking full responsibility and asking for forgiveness, not just from Alex and Sarah's memory, but from the public for the deception. The reaction was explosive but not entirely negative. While there was anger at the cover-up, many were moved by Charles's obvious emotion and the family's efforts to make amends. Alex, with dignity and grace, gave his own statement, honoring his mother's memory and expressing his desire to build relationships with his newfound family while maintaining his own identity. Constitutional experts debated the implications, but since the first marriage had been annulled, William's position as heir was secure. More importantly, the monarchy's handling of the revelation, with honesty rather than continued deception, marked a turning point in how the institution operated. Kate reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple search for charity documents. She had uncovered a secret that could have destroyed the monarchy but instead had chosen to use it as an opportunity for transformation and redemption. The palace instituted reforms, ensuring that such cover-ups could never happen again. Transparency and humanity became watchwords for a new era. Sarah Pemberton's story, tragic as it was, became a catalyst for change. Alex chose not to take any titles, preferring to remain a private citizen. But he became a regular presence at family gatherings, building relationships with his father and siblings that grew stronger with time. He established a foundation in his mother's name, supporting young women who faced impossible choices between love and duty. At Sarah's grave, which had been simple and unadorned, a new headstone was placed. It read, "Sarah Pemberton, beloved mother, a woman of courage and grace." Charles visited often, finally able to mourn openly the love he had lost and the years he had missed with his son. Kate kept Sarah's locket, a reminder of the woman whose hidden story had changed everything. The marriage certificate, once a secret that could have toppled thrones, was donated to the royal archives, no longer hidden but displayed as a reminder that even palaces built on centuries of tradition must evolve with truth and compassion. The scandal that everyone had feared would weaken the monarchy had, paradoxically, strengthened it. By choosing truth over deception, accountability over cover-up, and family over institution, they had shown that the crown could adapt and survive even the most challenging revelations. As Kate watched Alex join the family for Christmas at Sandringham, laughing with William and playing with the children, she knew that Sarah Pemberton's sacrifice had not been in vain. Love, truth, and justice had finally prevailed, even if it had taken 4 decades. The palace was indeed in shock when the story broke, but from that shock came healing, transformation, and ultimately, a stronger, more honest institution. Kate's discovery of that hidden marriage certificate had not destroyed the monarchy. It had saved it from its own secrets and given it a chance to truly serve with integrity in the modern world.